So my name is Rosemary Garrison, and my current home as of very recently is the beautiful Ojai Valley. I was in San Francisco for about 10 years and recently moved south. Still spend a little bit of time in San Francisco every month, but home is now Ojai, and I'm totally in love with it. I was in graduate school in Encinitas, in San Diego, California, a million years ago. And a friend of my mom said, "Oh my God, you live in San Diego, you have to practice with Tim Miller." And at that point, I had no idea who he was. I think I'd done, I don't know, 2 or 3 yoga classes in my life. And I was already drawn to the practice and drawn to some of the philosophy behind the practice, but really didn't know that much. So I went to the full primary series led class on Sunday morning at Tim's old studio in Encinitas. And like so many of us, I was just immediately in love and stayed with Ashtanga and a really, really deep Mysore practice for years. Moved to Manhattan, moved to San Francisco, and moved all over the place and tried to seek out Ashtanga teachers wherever I was. And just gradually, through a lot of different circumstances, started to play with Vinyasa. There's an incredible body of teachers in the San Francisco area, so I was really, really blessed to be able to work with a lot of variety. And I found some Vinyasa teachers who were able to keep the integrity of the practice and really strong alignment and breath awareness in Vinyasa, which can sometimes be lost. So I felt really grateful to be able to kind of play with both of them. I keep coming back to Ashtanga because I think there's a purity and an authenticity to that practice that is hard to find elsewhere. And to be perfectly honest, there's just something it does for my physical and energetic body that I rarely find in a Vinyasa class. However, it's not for every body, and it's not even for me on any given day. So sometimes the Vinyasa practice allows for a little bit more creativity and a little bit more freedom and adapting the practice to what I need or to what my students need. I'm currently teaching in Ojai, just 1 class a week on Saturday mornings at Sacred Space. I'm also in San Francisco about 1 week out of every month to see clients there. When I'm there, I tend to teach out of the pad studio, and I do quite a few retreats and trainings every year: Mexico, Northern California, Hawaii, just wherever I'm passionate about going. So a memorable moment in my teaching or my practice, it's a really, really beautiful question, and I could spend a long time answering it. Something that just kind of popped into my awareness. I've been working this past year or so with a chakra flow workshop, so it's an extended class, and there's definitely some meditation and pranayama involved and some instruction around the philosophy of the chakras. And the last time I offered it was in San Francisco, and within 12 to 24 hours, I think I had an email from almost everyone who was in the workshop, and it was just so impactful for each of them in totally different ways. Whether it was, "Oh my God, I had no idea my heart chakra was so shut down. Wow, I didn't realize the hips relate to the first chakra in that way." Like, just some incredible connections between the physical body, the energetic body, and then our psychology and how that plays out in our day-to-day lives and in our relationships and in our work. And it was so clear and so powerful from so many different people, some of whom I'd never even met, that it really fortified what I know and love about the practice. Every now and then having it reflected like that is just really deeply fulfilling. So that's one of many. I don't know intellectually why pranayama is so powerful for me and for many people. When I started practicing with Tim, he didn't necessarily teach pranayama very often, and he would tell stories about Pattabhi Jois originally teaching it to his Western students and being hesitant to do so because he knew how powerful the practice was. So little by little, Tim would share bits and pieces, I think with students he felt were ready for it or wanted it. And then I think it was intuitive. This is what's so ineffable and so powerful about all aspects of the yoga practice is that we're drawn to certain things not necessarily knowing why, and definitely not knowing where they're going to take us. But there were days when I didn't have the energy for an asana practice, or I'd be too wrecked emotionally or psychologically, and all I could do was just sit and breathe. And found myself working with some of the exercises that Tim had given us, and the grounding and the peace that would come, and sometimes the insights that would come, were just unparalleled. So it's become an invaluable tool as a being, as a practitioner, and as a teacher. I have a lot of respect for injury in the practice, or injury outside of the practice, and then using the practice to work with it. I feel incredibly, incredibly blessed that in, 15 to 20 years of practice and teaching, knock on wood, I haven't sustained any really severe injuries, but I have certainly had my share of limitations, dealt with some really deep sciatic nerve pain for a while, and some shoulder gunk, any number of things, but nothing really prohibitive. But I've certainly seen it in those I love and in my students. And it's remarkable to me what the practice can offer as someone is recovering. I treat it with an incredible amount of respect. I do not think that a full, intense Ashtanga practice, or even a really deep Vinyasa practice, is appropriate when you're working with some injuries. And I think it's really, really important to find teachers who are well-versed in rehabilitating the body when you're recovering from an injury. There's certain things that I do feel comfortable working with, and there's some things that I just wouldn't, that I would recommend to other teachers, or even to other healers. So what's inspiring me lately? Well, this move to Ojai has been like a homecoming. I was fortunate enough to grow up in Northern California in Carmel Valley. There's a river running through the back of my mama's house, and I spent a lot of time running around outside, digging in the dirt, backpacking, and I love living in the city. I loved Manhattan, and I love San Francisco. I love the culture and the diversity and the edge, but there's just nothing like a quiet, dark night sky. And in the couple years that I've been here, we've seen bear and coyote and mountain lions, and just that wildness and that quiet, and it's not disconnected from my practice. I feel like what I connect with when I'm in the natural, wild world is very similar to what I connect with in the unseen, energetic realm in the yoga practice. And always, 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 a bottle of champagne with my partner, or a really good friend, or an awesome piece of art, or any number of really stimulating cultural or travel events fulfills me deeply. I know my practice is working when I feel good. And I think it's really, really important to ask yourself that question as a practitioner, as a teacher, as a human being, because there's so much pressure in our culture, in our world, to get it right, and to do it well, and maybe even to be the best. And I see this in the Ashtanga practice because it's a set sequence of poses, and if you can't get a certain pose, you can't move on in the practice, and it can create this dynamic of, I'm just not good enough to finish the primary series, or I can't get through the second series, and who cares? So you can do a back bend or not, you can do a headstand or not. If you don't feel good, if you're not more alive and awake in your own body, if there's not more awareness of your own heart, if you're not connecting with the people you love more deeply, if you're not enjoying your work and food and nature and pleasure, what's the point? I mean, a perfect pose really doesn't mean anything if it's not awakening that internal life and a sense of love and interconnectedness with the world and with everything that we do. One last thing that I'd love to say, and And this sort of started as a joke with me and my friends and some of my students over the years as I started teaching. We used to say that yoga should come with a warning, that it will totally revolutionize your life. And sometimes in ways that you didn't necessarily anticipate or maybe even want. And I've seen this in my own life for sure, and in some of my friends and my students' lives. And it can be very challenging and very painful for periods of time. Without exception, however, I will say that if we can stay with that organic change, whatever may be calling us there, and if we can use our practice and any other tools that support us in our lives to move through whatever those challenges may be, we will always be happier and healthier for it. It will not always be easy. I'm going to say that right now, but it will definitely be worth it. And I personally believe that's part of the reason we're here in these human forms, is to grow and evolve in that way.